right, we've got another I think, pretty exciting episode of Sedaru Live ready to roll here. I see everybody kind of popping in here as we hit the go live button. So let everybody get in, get your volume adjusted. I'm pretty excited for our topic today. We're gonna try and shoot down some excuses for why we're still using paper out in the field. We'll see. It's like might be like that stump the chump game. You know, people might have better excuses than we have answers, but I think we've got pretty good answers.
I think so. You know, it's just there's really no excuse this day and age, man. I think we got the technology there. We got things are easy enough to use. This isn't new stuff. You know what I mean? So excited to walk everyone through. Really, I want to hear what these excuses are and how we can defend and deflect them and show really. I think, frankly, it's kind of the truth of where we're at now, and it's no longer the 20th, 19th, 18th century anymore. So
Right, I hear you. Yeah, so just by way of introduction, so everybody knows, if you haven't met us before, I'm Adam Simonson. I'm Director of Enterprise Solutions for Sedaru, and Kevin Koshko here is our Chief Product Officer. So Kevin's really the one in charge of Sedaru and the interface and a lot of what you see. I spend most of my time working with utilities, helping them craft a lot of their technology solutions. And so what we're going to do format-wise here, we're going to start by discussing kind of what we see and hear from folks as sort of the three most common excuses from the folks that we work with. But what we want to do is make this as interactive as we can too. So you'll notice in that interface a little Q&A button. If you hit on that, throw in there what your favorite excuse is. And once we go through ours a little bit here and kind of show you some things within Sedaru, then we're gonna go through that and kind of pick out some of our favorite ones. And what we're gonna do is also unmute the person for some of the folks that we call on. So be prepared. We'll yell out your name and unmute you, and we'll let you talk a little bit, and you can kind of lay out some of your reasons or excuses there as well. Timing wise in this whole thing, we're going to try to keep this to 30 minutes. We might run a little bit long if the dialogue's good, but we know everybody's got busy days. We got busy days. So we're going to try to keep things right here at 30 minutes. Anything else, Kevin, before we kind of jump into this?
Nah, man, let's do it.
All right. Sounds good. So, hey, listen, number one excuse I hear, and I think, between you and I, Kevin, we probably have, 30 going on 40 years of experience of doing these kinds of solutions with water utilities and municipalities.
Yeah, unfortunately, with you're giving away our age a little bit, but luckily it's like half and half. So
that's right.
You're not 60, so.
So the number one excuse that I hear from folks is that it's really just too hard for them to use. That our field staff, you don't understand that this is the way that it's been forever, and I'm never going to get them to use a computer. And what's interesting is that things have changed so much with that. And I'll tell you what, a couple of the things that have changed that dramatically, really even in the last few years, this has changed it a lot, right? Everybody's carrying around a phone. You've got a cheap iPad that you can now buy for, next to nothing, not next to nothing, but way cheaper than other hardware. And so that's just amazingly easier to use, right? And there's not a person that you run into nowadays that can't figure out how to use a smartphone, right? The folks at the nursing homes are like texting their grandkids and going on Facebook and showing them things, and they're uploading pictures, and they're filling out forms online to collect I don't even think you can get a social security check nowadays without going online and going in and filling out the form and getting stuff out. And so what's neat is that the software that's being used on a phone or on a tablet is just dramatically easier, right? I'm not having to use a mouse. It's really kind of touchscreen enabled. I can log in and out really easily, and I can see see what I'm doing, really pretty quickly. So I don't know, Kevin, can you show us kind of quickly how that might, how that presents itself in Sedaru?
I will. Yeah, I think that's seeing is kind of the best way to look at this here. So I'm going to jump on to my iPad here. Give me one sec while I fire this up. And yeah, let's take a look at that, because I think it's important for us to, we can talk about how easy it is, but until we really feel and see it for ourselves, it's that makes all the difference. So let me share my screen here. All right, so here's me on my iPad. I'm gonna make this full screen. So this guy right here, nice iPad Air. Get one, pick one up at Best Buy, pick one up on Amazon, pick it up at Costco. So easy to get to the devices. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but ease of use. So meaning I don't have to enter in a bunch of information. I don't have to wait 10 minutes for my laptop or my Toughbook to boot up. I just fire up my iPad, click the Sedaru icon, and I'm in. It's very easy to get to. That's almost one of the biggest complaints that I've seen just from like training and getting field crews adapted to using technology is if it's impossible for them to get into the system, they're typing in a bunch of VPN passwords, they're trying to get into, they're waiting 15 minutes for the laptop to boot up. All of those things make a big difference. So making sure that that barrier isn't there for when they can actually just start using the app is real important.
Yep, absolutely.
So, and then what's nice is, once I get into the app, I'm not confused. I'm not presented with 200 buttons, a bunch of symbols that I'm not used to. Just something as simple as using map symbology that the field crews are used to makes a big difference as well. If you're showing them all these new symbols for hydrants and valves and pipelines, that can be difficult at first. They may be used to seeing their valves as like a little bow tie symbol, or their pipes in a different thickness based on size. So that's an important thing to be able to accommodate. And once you have those really initial key components dialed in, they begin to trust the system a little bit more and consider it a lot more usable. And then, of course, when it comes to seeing what I have to do for the day, again, not a bunch of buttons, but really just a list of things that I need to be paying attention to. Up top here, we have all the different assets within the system. I'm logged in as a kind of general foreman guy, so I have different things that I'm working on. I might be responsible for some of the valve crews, the hydrant work, pipes, might be repairs or replacement, customer service tasks. But basically, whatever I click on these 66 hydrants. These are all the hydrants that require work to be done. So I can see active versus completed. That's great. I got 285 valves that I need to do. Interact with the map real easily, like what I'm used to with my phone or Google Maps or something, where I can pinch and pan. It makes it just so much easier for us.
Well, and I'll tell you the thing too is it's beyond just is it easy enough for them to use. There's also this piece of, is it actually making their job a little bit easier to do, right? And when I can start my day and go instantly be like, oh wow, here are the tasks that I have in front of me. Here's where they're located at. Here's where I can see them. It is, it's always going to be, you're empowering those field crews to be more productive on their own.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then once you get there and see, okay, here's the valve exercise that I need to do. I get to this valve, I see what's been done before me. So here's the asset history behind it, what they got before. And then when I hit new, it takes me to a really simple form. Currently a lot of people are just filling out paperwork and entering in things, and then someone's coming back into the office early doing data entry. Instead of that, just make it really easy for the field crews to just fill it out while they're there. They're the ones who know what's going on out there. They're the eyes and ears out there. So being able to quickly and easily do things like pick lists and drop downs, entering in, turns to close and how deep is it, all of this.
What I love too is that the touch screen just makes it easy.
Yeah.
I can remember I would say maybe like 2002 doing some old software, trying to teach some field staff how to do some things. One of the first questions was we had to teach people how to use the mouse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the start of the training, and you were like, oh wow, this isn't going to go well.
Yep.
You know? And so the simplified, just using the touch screen, it's so intuitive that it's been amazing when we go out and train field staff with Sedaru, that you put it in their hands and 15, 20 minutes later, they're kind of looking at you like, okay, we got it. You know, when do we get to the hard part of the training?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's like, well, the hard part was logging in. So we're all done, you know? So no, it makes it nice. And yeah, I agree. I recall in days of yore, doing a lot of training, spending time on zooming in and panning. And that was like a hard thing when you're using a mouse or using like a touchpad of a laptop. It's like really frustrating. This is just, I want to touch this. I want to move that with my finger. And it's just so straightforward. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right. Let's hop into excuse number 2 here. All right. So, excuse number 2, right? So once we get done realizing that everybody at the utility knows how to use a phone, and we realize that, you know, one of the things that comes up sometimes is that our data is not good enough. And this, you know, this is less of what I would consider an excuse in some cases, and really kind of a real problem, right? That folks have. And through the years, I've seen so many different approaches to tackling some of these things, but I will tell you the one that works the best, the one that utilities continue to reap the benefits from, right, is figuring out how to make working with your data everybody's responsibility at the utility and getting everybody invested in it. And so what you'll see sometimes is that you say, well, my data's not great and my GIS isn't perfect, and I only have 60% of my hydrants in there, or my valves aren't snapped to pipes, and, you know, my manholes are over here, all those sort of things, right? And so you could go out and say, you know what, I'm going to put together a big capital project. I'm going to go hire somebody and I'm going to go survey everything, right? And I'm going to go buy the fanciest GPS I can, and I'm going to do all that and do that. And that approach, you know, that it's not like that approach doesn't work, but that's a really expensive and slow way to do it, because you're now spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and, you know, many months or years out surveying it, while at the same time your field crews and your staff that are doing the work are continuing to kind of be disconnected from the process, right? And so you're not developing any internal skills within the utility to how do I maintain this data? How do I actually use it? And from the board perspective, or like a city council perspective, people look at that and they're like, man, you're spending $500,000 to give us some prettier maps. You know, they're not excited about the end outcome out of that. And so what we have really tried hard to do is, on the Sedaru side, is to make it so that, one, we can work with data in just about any level of quality, right? But to then give you the tools so that as you're going out there and completing that work on a day-to-day basis, you can see maps instantly. You can update information that's on there. You can, in the course of your activities, be going ahead and adding the information I want to know about those valves and hydrants in my system, right? I'm doing a manhole inspection. I should be updating all that information, updating the map location, and doing that. All of that work that you're doing at the utility doesn't stop because the data isn't great. You know, you're like, well, my data's not great, so let's pack it up, boys. Let's go home for the day. You know, the work still has to happen, right? So you might as well be endeavoring on doing it in a way that's sustainable and is going to let you do that. So, you know, let's see some of those tools, Kevin. I think in Sedaru that kind of help with some of the data quality side of that.
Yeah. So here's one of my favorite examples. So, 95% of our customers have information. They'll have geometry of pipes or hydrants or valves. It may be totally incomplete. And lots of them have like 0 attributes tied to it. Nothing's been really field verified. So when someone gets their GIS in place, and maybe they'll do a GIS conversion project, taking all their paper and putting it into GIS, rarely does it have a lot of those attributes that people might be looking for. And that's another kind of excuse. Well, we don't really have good data, so we don't think we're going to be ready for this type of project. But the reality is, you need a system to make it easy to collect the data. That's, it's the double-edged sword, but In this case, I want to show a good example of that. I clicked on this fire hydrant, and this is so common. You can see, look, the specifications, everything's blank. They don't have a manufacturer in there. There is no model year. They don't know the type of ground that this is on. There's no asset history behind it. So what we can do is say, okay, well, I'm going to do a new hydrant inspection and fill it out. And while we're out there, like you said, we're already doing inspections. We might as well go and verify that all this information is accurate. So as I'm going through, again, I just have a super simple way of saying, okay, what's the manufacturer? What model is it? Does it need to be painted while I'm out there? Okay, is it on the curb? Is it on the sidewalk? And then I can look at things like, okay, is it at, below, above grade? So is it compliant? Is there any issues? Do we need to make sure that it was lubricated as part of the inspection, or the gaskets replaced? So all of this can be done. I can fill in my flow in GPM, whether I have I can type this in manually, or I can go through and I can show you an example of a calculator that puts it all in there for us. Spending, how much time we're out there flushing it, keeping track of all the non-revenue water that goes with it. I can take a photograph of it and all of that detail, put in some comments, and basically mark this as complete. So what this just did is now we have specifications in here. We got the manufacturer, we got the model, year, ground type, we have the flow, we have history behind it. So this is kind of how it gets done. Once they're actually going out there and they go through the whole system, now you have some really meaningful ground verified data.
Yep. Wait, so, Kevin, go back to that picture real quick, back in the task there.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting, it's one of the things that comes up sometimes too. And this is not so much a paper-based thing as much as, in general, like hydrant inspections, like, hey, how do I know somebody actually went out and turned that valve or turned that hydrant or did some of those things? And having the staff go out there and grab a picture when they do a lot of those things is such a good way to just be able to, because it's pretty hard to go through the effort of not doing that for real, and look at that. That's a beautiful hydrant you have.
I was there.
And so, you can do that from a condition assessment perspective everywhere. And again, what's nice is because this is all working in that interconnected cloud sort of environment, it's instantly going right back to the office as well. So you get that instant sort of condition, assessment back on those things. And like you said, it's a very easy field verification.
Yep.
What happens, Kevin, if let's say I'm assigned to say, like, hey, I want you to go out, let's see, what's the road there? Blue Tan Drive that you've got out there. And it says, hey, I need you to go out there and get all the hydrants out there that are inspected. We've only got one here in the GIS, but there's another one at the end of the cul-de-sac there or somewhere else that's been put out there. Like, how would I deal with that?
Yeah. So that's the nice thing. I mean, whether it's moving things that are in the wrong place or adding something, I wanted to actually show you the valve example, because this was a good one here. Because we can add hydrants, we can add valves, or we can move things that are inaccurate. So in this example, we got out there, this valve was actually totally on the wrong side of the road. So I click on this guy. What I want to do is actually move it to the other side here. It's really on this side of the street instead of over here. So I can go through, I can hit the move feature, I can tap a location on the map. I got my little crosshair here. This would take into account your GPS location as well. So, basically moving that, feature moved successfully. That's great, thank you. Now let's go in and fill in our exercise details and move on. So really simple to do. Whether we're moving, whether we're adding, it's all the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, and what's nice is for folks that don't know, what Sedaru is from a back-end perspective, we're using an Esri geodatabase and Esri services for managing all the data and storing all the information. So any of processes that you have today for how you manage and update GIS and do that, Sedaru can typically fold right into those. So it's not asking you to necessarily reinvent the wheel in terms of how you manage data or having to pump it from one system to the other or doing any kind of nasty synchronizations.
Yep, agreed.
Cool. All right, let's see. Let's go back. Let's start. Let's talk about the last excuse that I have. up here, and hang on, let me check our questions real quick. Let's see. All right, we're getting a couple of questions in here, but I'm a little worried people might be getting shy. So just go ahead and put your questions in there, and we can just talk through some of them. If you don't want us to call on you and talk about it, that's fine as well. But the more questions you have, we certainly want to address those and get the answers out to you as quickly as we possibly can. All right, let's talk about the third one. It's too expensive, right? Costs too much money, And this is always one of those like really loaded questions, right? In terms of like, well, what is that? What does that really mean? It's too expensive, and it's too expensive in what regard, right? So let me address it from a couple of areas here, right? So one, it used to be it was really expensive to deploy hardware out to folks in the field, right? And I can remember some of like my first jobs, like right out of college kind of thing, where it was like, you used to be in the office and people would say, why would I get you a computer? Like it was like you had to really justify your existence in the world to get a computer. So getting a computer for field staff seemed crazy, And really, even up into this day and age, we used to see like in the last few years, really before the iPad, you would sort of see the same thing. Like I'm not going to go spend $2,000 on a laptop for 50 field guys. That's a major capital expenditure, and then how are they ever going to get used? And so the tablets have changed that, right? Because I think now with the recent Apple announcement, the like lowest version iPad now, I think it's like $350 or something.
That's insane. Yeah.
Which Sedaru runs amazing on. I mean, it runs really, really good on it because it's designed to be pretty lightweight. So you're spending $350 on that. And then hang on, I want to show you this. So you can see popped up on my screen here. I pulled it up on Amazon. I was just checking, like, so if I want to go out and buy a ruggedized case now for my iPad, it's just going to cost me $40. So now for $400, I'm buying a ruggedized piece of hardware. That what I have seen most IT departments gravitating towards now is they might go out, right, and they might go out and buy 10 iPads, right, or 20 iPads, right. You buy 20 iPads, you spend $8,000, right, with cases for their 15 field guys that they have. And then 4 or 5 of them sit on a shelf. And that way, if somebody comes in and they break one, or something happens to it, they can give them a new iPad and they're off and running and they're ready to go. And it works really, really well. It makes it so that they don't have to. It makes it so that they don't have to be making these sort of major capital expenditures there.
Yeah. I always crack up with the price, Adam. You're looking at, here's a fully ready to roll iPad for $400. Remember the tough books? I mean, they still have them, but I mean, that was like what you had to get. If you wanted to get a laptop in the guy's hands that you were worried if they were going to break or whatever, you're dropping $4,000 to $5,000 on a tough book CF30 or whatever. And and now it's like 400. It's basically a tenth of that.
Right. Yep. No, and then the other side of the cost thing, right? The other side of the cost is that you are is sort of the people cost that comes in and around these things, right? And so we used to, and that's just changed dramatically, right? So one, does it really make sense to have that person in the office who's taking that piece of paper and retyping information, into the field? And these are sort of harder things for folks to justify, on some of these things, but it is, when you transcribed, and then you think about other pieces, it's just really straightforward to say, gosh, I can probably make a software investment that's going to fix a lot of these things pretty quickly.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry. I don't know if it was just my internet connection or yours, but it sounded like you were on Quaaludes for a couple of seconds. So
I'm not on Quaaludes, but I could have been.
I got a little choppy and slowed down, but I think we're back. So.
All right. So there's a few questions here. I think most people have thrown them up here anonymously. So let's just talk about them, Kevin.
Yeah.
And then, as we go through here, and I'll let you take a first crack at this one. Somebody asked, how is this different? How is Sedaru different from just using Collector for our
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Collector is a great tool. It's something that that you would need to configure and build and create yourself. So from a GIS administrator perspective that has a good amount of skills, then Collector will do a good job with doing data entry, and field data collection. I think where Sedaru kind of makes it a little different is how tailored it is for specific workflows. It's not just a general data collection framework that's very generic. It has a lot of very tailored tools for fire flow testing, for dosing, and other types of chemical analysis for water production and water quality. And so there's a bunch of things in there that that we built that make it very specific for specific workflows. And then plus just the ease of use is still significantly different. We've talked to folks that have had Collector that work great for them, and then Sedaru replaces it with something that's meets their needs a little bit better because it's easier to use.
Yeah, and I've just been working with the utility that they were using Collector for a while, and like you said, to do some basic data collection on things, and then they got to the point where they were like, okay, what I really need to be doing though is managing a team of people. I need to work orders that have to be completed with this. We're responding to incidences, and we're doing that, and just doing basic data collection. That Collector gives me, just really, wasn't going to fit the bill on things, and so that's really probably the biggest difference on some of those things. So somebody else asked, what's the cost for conversion of data to this platform? And then what's like the yearly maintenance cost? And I'll take a stab at that a little bit. I think, so when we talk about conversion of data to the platform, I mean, that's a fairly loaded question, right? In terms of, it really depends on what kind of data we're talking about and where it's coming from, et cetera. In general, data in Sedaru is getting stored in a geodatabase. It's an asset-centric model, meaning that data is stored against the assets themselves. So like when I complete a valve exercise, all the activities around that are keyed back to that valve ID, but it's a record that essentially fills all the information about that valve exercise. So it's typically pretty straightforward to take data to be able to import it into Sedaru legacy information. The trick can sometimes be, well, what is the source system that data is coming out of? So if it's just sitting in like some other GIS information table somewhere, then it's a unbelievably pretty simple process. If it is buried off in an AS400 mainframe server and you got to dig it off of some tapes that are in a basement somewhere, then you're in sort of a whole different arena in terms of that. So when folks want to talk about data conversion, it's always a good conversation, and I usually always start with understanding the why, right? What do you want to do? Is this data from the last few years that's probably, you want your field staff to know about and to work with, and you want it from an engineering perspective, that's probably worth it. If I've been tracking valve exercising records since the 70s, on a bunch of things, you can probably have a conversation or question of where's a good breaking point of where we can just say that lives somewhere else and we can access it for nostalgic purposes somewhere. But we would do it somewhere else in there as well too.
Yeah, we don't support 8-track at this time, but I think we'll get there.
8-tracks are awesome. Shag carpeting.
Yeah, man.
Back in the good old days.
I'll tell you.
All right, good. Cool. So I think we climbed through a few questions here, Kevin. Any other big thoughts? Any other things around, this idea around moving paper from the field? What's your thought, Kevin, around being able to work offline versus online and is that a good idea, bad idea? Like, what do you see?
Yeah, I mean, it's key. I mean, the good news is the infrastructure for supporting like real-time data access is always getting better and better every year. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the wireless networks are improving, so that's a good thing. However, it's just reality that there's just tons of spots that totally suck with, you know,
Yeah.
wireless coverage. And you know, when a field crew's out there and they're trying to do their work and they can't because the wireless connection is preventing them from doing that, they will take the device, they'll put it in the back of the truck, and then they're going to pull out their paper maps that are always there for them. So it's critical that you have a solution that's going to have offline data support, that's going to provide them with usability, even if cell reception's poor. And then once the connection comes online, it can automatically push everything back, but they don't need to worry about that. That needs to be a function of the software. So.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And you did, I mean, it used to be, you know, 10 years ago, our solutions were built around, you know, the industry solutions were built around do everything offline and then sync it all back. Like you get back in from the office and sync it back. Right. And so you lost something in there a little bit. You know, certainly lost the user experience. Right. It was like carrying around a clipboard worth of paper in a lot of ways, you know. So now, you know, this ability to work online most of the time really changes things, because now when something's completed, you instantly get that information back, right, into the office. You can respond quickly. You can sort of change your day. But because Sedaru runs as that app, like you said, you have that offline storage capability that's in there. You've got that ability for it to, as it loses connectivity, you can still be working with the data. You can still be completing your tasks and activities as we go along through there.
Yep.
So, cool. Well, this has been good, Kevin. I like doing this. You know, with what I would hope to do on this next one that we do, maybe what we'll do is we'll prearrange some other folks to jump on the line with us, because I'd like to hear some voices of customers and people, and kind of hear some of their thoughts on this stuff. But thank you for the folks that did ask questions out here. I hope we were able to answer some of those things. We're going to plan on keep doing these Sedaru lives, you know, probably every 3 to 4 weeks or so, as much as we can juggle it within our schedule. But everybody, you'll get a follow-up email or two around this, you know, so you'll have some opportunities to ask other questions. And certainly, you know, Kevin or I can make ourselves available too to kind of personally answer some of your questions and stuff. We love hearing about the challenges that you have, and you know, would love to have opportunities to help solve some of those challenges.
Sure. Yeah, and you know, I would encourage you guys to maybe provide some feedback, also maybe some ideas on what you think might be a good topic of discussion. You know, we're not afraid to get controversial here, so. But it just needs to be industry specific. That's all.
That's true. All right. Very good. All right. Well, thank you so much for the time, Kevin, today. Thank you, everybody, for who attended. And we will talk to you soon.
Yeah. Big thanks. We'll see you next time.